My fiancé got my sister pregnant 2 weeks before our wedding. Years later, my family begged me to adopt their daughter, but my answer destroyed them forever. I'm 32 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer, and until recently, I thought I had already gotten over the worst betrayal of my life. But it turns out the universe had other plans for me. What happened almost 6 years ago completely destroyed my life, my trust in people, and basically my ability to believe I deserved to be loved. And now, after everything I went through, my family had the nerve to ask me for something that I still don't know if it was fair or completely out of line. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I met Matthew, I was 23, had just finished college, and was working at this horrible advertising agency where the boss was an insufferable sexist. Matthew came in as the new account director, and I don't know. There was something about him that made me feel safe, like I had finally found someone who really saw me. We started dating like 3 months after he joined the agency, and it was one of those relationships that feels easy from the start. No drama, no mind games, just two people who enjoyed being together. My family adored him, especially my younger sister Brittany, who at the time was like 19 and in her second year of college. Brittany was always my parents' favorite, the baby of the family, the one who never did anything wrong according to them. I was the responsible older daughter, the one who got good grades, the one who never caused problems. But somehow, that was never enough compared to how special Brittany was, just for existing. Don't get me wrong, I loved my sister. Or at least I thought I did. But there were times when her spoiled princess attitude drove me crazy. She always got what she wanted, was always the center of attention, and my parents never said no to anything. Matthew and I dated for 3 years before he proposed. It was at a family dinner at my parents' house, super traditional style. He asked for my hand in front of the whole family, and everyone cried with happiness, including Brittany, who, he seemed genuinely excited for me. We started planning the wedding immediately because I had always dreamed of getting married young, and he was just as enthusiastic. We set the date for 8 months later, in spring, and I was obsessed with every detail, spending hours looking at dresses and flowers and all that stuff that now seems so stupid and superficial to me. Things started to change like 2 months after the engagement, but I didn't realize it at the time because I was too naive or too trusting. I don't know. Brittany started showing up more often at our apartment, always with some excuse that she needed to talk to me or that she was in the area and wanted to say hi. Then she started calling Matthew directly to ask for help with her car or with college homework, and him being the kind guy, he was never said no to her. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there, but I was so caught up in my bubble of happiness that I didn't want to see reality. 6 months after the engagement, 2 weeks before the wedding to be exact, my parents called me and asked me to come to their house for an urgent family meeting. They said Brittany needed to talk to me about something important and that it was better to do it with the whole family present. I thought maybe she had failed an exam or crashed her car. I don't know. Normal, problematic younger sister stuff. Matthew was working that day, so I went alone. And when I arrived, my whole family was sitting in the living room with weird faces, like serious but also uncomfortable, and Brittany was crying on the couch next to my mom. My father was the one who spoke first. He said, "Nicole, we need to talk to you about Matthew and Brittany." And I was like, what do those two have to do with each other? And then my mother, with her hand on Brittany's shoulder like protecting her, told me that Brittany had something to confess to me. My sister looked at me with those teary eyes and said, "I'm so sorry, Nicole. I don't know how it happened, but I'm pregnant." And when I asked her what does that have to do with me, she looked down and whispered, "It's Matthew's." I literally felt like someone had hit me in the stomach with a baseball bat. I couldn't breathe. My hands started shaking and everything went blurry for a second. I asked her how long this had been going on, and she said like 2 months, that it had started a few weeks after the engagement, and that she hadn't wanted to, but Matthew had pursued her and she was young and confused. The whole time my mother was nodding like, "Yeah, my poor baby is the victim here," and my father wouldn't even look me in the eyes. I asked them if Matthew knew, and my father said yes, that he had come to talk to them that morning and had admitted everything, that Brittany was 9 weeks pregnant and he was going to take responsibility. I don't remember exactly what I said next, but I do remember that I got up, walked over to Brittany, and slapped her so hard the sound echoed through the whole house. My mother screamed, and my father stood up to stop me, but I was already walking toward the door. The only thing I managed to say to them before leaving was, "You're all dead to me. Never contact me again." And I left there, shaking from head to toe. I drove back to the apartment I shared with Matthew, And when I got there, he was packing his things. He didn't even try to explain himself, just looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, Nicole. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it did, and now I have to do the right thing." I screamed everything that came to mind at him, told him he was a traitor, a liar, a piece of garbage, and he just stood there, letting me scream until I had no words left. When I finished, he told me he was going to marry Brittany because it was the right thing to do, because she was pregnant and he wasn't going to abandon his child. I laughed in his face, like a hysterical laugh full of rage, and told him to go to hell, that I hoped they'd be very happy, together. That was the last time I spoke directly to him. The wedding was obviously canceled. I had to call all the guests, return all the gifts, lose the venue deposit, and basically deal with the humiliation of explaining to people that my fiancé had left me for my younger sister 1 week before we were supposed to get married. The only person who kept me sane during that time was my best friend Angela, who's known me since kindergarten and who let me cry on her shoulder for weeks. She was the one who convinced me not to do anything stupid, the one who reminded me that I had to eat and sleep and keep living even though I didn't want to. Matthew and Brittany got married 2 weeks later in a private ceremony with only my parents present. I found out because a distant cousin who still talked to me sent me a text message with the news. That night, I got drunk alone in my apartment and cried until I fell asleep on the bathroom floor. Angela found me the next day because she had come over, with coffee and donuts, and I wasn't opening the door, so she used the emergency key I had given her. She picked me up off the floor, put me in the shower, and told me, "Nicole, this can't go on like this. You have to get out of this city, or you're going to end up destroying yourself." 3 months after the canceled wedding disaster, I made a decision. I quit my job, sold almost everything I had, and moved to another city like 4 hours away. I got a small studio near downtown and started working as a freelancer from home. I thought getting physically away would help me heal, but all I managed to do was fall into a self-destructive spiral that almost killed me. I started drinking. Not like a glass of wine with dinner, but like waking up and drinking vodka straight from the bottle before noon. I stopped answering messages, stopped seeing Angela when she tried to visit me, stopped taking care of myself completely. I don't know how long I was like that. Maybe 6 months, maybe more. A whole period is blurry in my memory. What I do remember clearly is the day I realized I had hit rock bottom. I had no money, had lost all my clients for not delivering work on time. My apartment was a disaster and I hadn't showered in like a week. I was sitting on the floor of my empty living room because I had sold the furniture to pay rent, and I thought, this is it. This is what I became because of them. And in that moment I called Angela crying, like I couldn't even form coherent sentences, just crying, and she told me she was on her way and not to move. Angela arrived like 3 hours later with her boyfriend at the time. They packed all my stuff in their truck and took me back to our hometown. I moved into her apartment, into her guest room, and she basically became my babysitter for the next 8 months. She forced me to go to therapy twice a week, made sure I ate at least 2 meals a day, went with me to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, even though I didn't want to. Go. She was the friend everyone needs but very few have, the one who doesn't judge you for being destroyed, but also doesn't let you stay there rotting. Slowly, very slowly, I started to feel human again. I stopped drinking, started accepting small design jobs, started leaving the house and remembering that there was a world beyond my pain. Angela never mentioned my family. She knew that topic was forbidden, and I appreciated that she respected my boundaries. During all that time, almost 2 years after the betrayal, I didn't know anything at all about my parents, Brittany, or Matthew. It was like they had ceased to exist for me, and honestly, that suited me fine. But then, on a normal Tuesday in October, my mother showed up at Angela's apartment door. I don't know how she got the address. Probably some big-mouthed relative gave it to her. Angela told me she was there, and I almost told her to kick her out. But something in me, maybe curiosity or maybe masochism, made me tell her to let her in. My mother walked in with a small girl holding her hand, like 2.5 years old, with curly hair and Matthew's eyes, and I didn't need her to tell me who she was. "This is Zoe," my mother said, "your niece." And I just stood there not knowing what to do or say. My mother sat down on the couch without being invited and told me that Matthew had died 3 weeks earlier in a car accident. He had been in the hospital for 4 days before they turned off the machines. I felt something weird in my chest when she told me. It wasn't sadness exactly, but it wasn't indifference either. It was like a mix of relief and guilt for feeling that relief. I asked her why they hadn't let me know, and she said they didn't know how to contact me, that I had made it clear I didn't want to know anything about them. So why are you here now? I asked her, and she looked down before answering. Brittany is sick, my mother said. Very sick. She has a brain tumor, glioblastoma, and the doctors say she has between 1 and 4 years to live maximum. I stood there processing the information while Zoe played with a stuffed animal on the couch, completely oblivious to the conversation we were having. Your father and I can't raise Zoe when Brittany dies, my mother continued. We're too old and don't have the energy. Matthew's parents are going to help, but they're also elderly, and Brittany is devastated thinking about what's going to happen to her daughter. That's why I came to ask you, beg you if necessary, to consider adopting Zoe when the time comes. I literally laughed in her face. I told her, seriously? You seriously come here after almost 2 years of silence to ask me to raise the daughter of the man who betrayed me and the sister who stabbed me in the back? My mother started crying and saying she understood I was angry, but that Zoe was innocent, that she wasn't to blame for what her parents had done, that I was her only hope of having a stable life. I told her to leave, to give me a week to think about it, but that my answer would probably be no, and she left with Zoe, leaving me there, shaking with rage. Angela came into the living room after they left and found me sitting on the floor with my head in my hands. She asked if I was okay, and I told her I didn't know. That I didn't know anything. That all this was too much. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed awake thinking about everything that had happened. About Matthew dead, about Brittany dying, about that little girl who was going to be orphaned. Part of me felt a dark satisfaction thinking that they were suffering the consequences of their actions, but another part, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, felt a deep sadness for everything that had been lost. A week later, I called my mother and gave her my answer. No, I told her. I'm not going to adopt Zoe. I can't do that. I can't raise the daughter of the 2 people who destroyed me. My mother sobbed on the phone and told me she understood, but that she was disappointed, that she had hoped I would be bigger than my pain. I told her my pain was justified, and she had no right to judge me after everything that had happened. Before hanging up, I told her, but I want to see Brittany, if she wants to see me. My mother was silent for a moment and then said, come tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon. She'll be here. I drove to my parents' house for the first time in 2 years, feeling like I was going to throw up at any moment. I knocked on the door and my father opened it. He looked much older than I remembered, with more gray hair and wrinkles around his eyes. He didn't say anything, just stepped aside to let me in. Brittany was sitting on the same couch where she had confessed her betrayal to me 2 years before, but now she looked fragile and thin, with shorter hair and a visible scar on the left side of her head where they had probably done surgery. We looked at each other for a long moment without saying anything, and then she started crying. She said, I'm sorry, Nicole. I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I've lived with the guilt every day since it happened. I asked her why she had done it, and she said she didn't know, that she was jealous of me, of my perfect life, of how I was always the good daughter, and she was always the one disappointing everyone. She said she had seen an opportunity to take something away from me and had taken it without thinking about the consequences, and that now she was paying for it in the worst possible way. I didn't cry. I just sat there listening to her and feeling something I couldn't describe, like a mix of compassion and resentment. I told her I wasn't going to adopt Zoe, that I couldn't do that, and she said she understood that they should never have asked me for something like that. Then she asked if I could at least know her daughter before she left. Not as her mother, obviously, but maybe as her aunt. I told her I would think about it, and after a few more minutes of awkward conversation, I left there feeling strangely lighter, but also more confused. Over the next 3 years, I maintained occasional contact with Brittany. At first, it was just text messages every 2 or 3 months, then brief phone calls, and eventually visits every few months. Zoe grew up, and I watched her grow from a distance, being more of a kind of distant aunt than anything else. Brittany never pressured for us to have a closer relationship, and I appreciated that. There were moments when I felt that maybe I could forgive her, not forget, but forgive, and other moments when the old rage came back and I had to distance myself again. My relationship with my parents never fully recovered. I talked to them on the phone from time to time, saw them on special occasions, but we never became close like before. There was too much history, too much pain, and the fact that they had chosen Brittany's side during the crisis was something I couldn't completely get over. Angela told me that family doesn't always have to be perfect, that sometimes you just have to find a way to coexist without destroying yourself in the process. And I guess that's what I did. Brittany died on a Tuesday in spring, exactly 3 years after our reunion at my parents' house. She had been in hospice the last 2 weeks, and I had visited her 3 times, sitting by her side without saying much, just being there. The last time I saw her, she was so sedated from the pain that she barely recognized me, but she managed to squeeze my hand and whisper, "Thank you for coming back." I don't know if I really forgave myself for everything I felt during those years, the hatred, the resentment, the wish that she would suffer. But when she died, I felt a strange peace, like a dark chapter had finally closed. Zoe is 5 years old now and lives with my parents during the week and with Matthew's parents on weekends. I see her every 2 months or so, bring her gifts on her birthday and Christmas, and sometimes I take her to the park or the movies. She calls me Aunt Nicole and sees me as that, an aunt, not as a potential adoptive mother. Matthew's parents thanked me for being in her life even in this limited way, and my parents, though still disappointed that I didn't adopt Zoe, respect my decision. I'm not going to lie and say everything is perfect now, that I've completely healed and that I'm a better and stronger version of myself. There are still days when I wonder what would have happened if Matthew had never betrayed my trust, if Brittany had been a real sister, if my parents had defended me when I needed it. There are still nights when I can't sleep thinking about everything I lost, not just a fiancé and a sister, but the naive version of myself who believed that family would always be on your side. But I've also learned things, I guess. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened, but finding a way to keep living without the poison of resentment consuming you from the inside. I've learned that biological family isn't always the one that holds you up when you fall. Sometimes it's friends like Angela who become your real family. And I've learned that it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to protect yourself, even if that disappoints other people. Zoe asked me last week if her mom was in heaven with her dad, and I told her yes, that they were probably up there together watching over her. She thought for a moment, and then asked me if I missed her mom. I told her the truth, that yes, I missed the sister I could have had if things had been different. She hugged me with those little arms and told me, "It's okay, Aunt. I miss her too, but I like that you're here." And in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision, that being her aunt, being in her life in this limited but real way, was all I could give without destroying myself in the process. I don't know what is going to happen in the future. If someday I'll be able to have a closer relationship with my parents, or if there will always be this uncomfortable distance between us. I don't know if Zoe is going to grow up and want to know the full story of why her aunt didn't want to adopt her, or if she'll understand that sometimes love isn't enough to erase the pain. What I do know is that I'm surviving, and after everything I've been through, that's already something. Angela tells me she's proud of me, and honestly, there are days when I'm proud of myself too, for having made it this far without completely losing myself along the way.